All right, we are live, and I'm going to get right into it. First of all, I want to apologize if it sounds like I'm in a wind tunnel. Essentially, I am. The air conditioner decided to give up the ghost this morning, and it's over 90 degrees. So I've got a box fan pulling cool air up from the basement, and I've got a attic fan going full blast, pulling as much air through the house as possible to try to keep the temperature down. So if it sounds a little breezy in here, I apologize, but it is what it is. I wanted to go live and give an update real quick on what's going on with the book. As of right now, June 3rd of 2018, the entire manuscript, photos, and everything are with the designer. The designer and I have had several back and forth exchanges about where things need to go, how things need to be laid out. She has sent me 2 different versions so far to look at and request adjustments. I'm hoping, knock on wood, that we will get to a finalized version this week. My priorities, and of course somebody all the way across the country who's doing this remotely, are obviously a little bit different. If I had the software and the training to be able to interface with a more modern press than the presses that I was trained on in the Navy, I'd do the design and layout myself. However, it is what it is. In order to have the print on demand and ebook and all that, the designer has to do it. The publisher's designer has to do it. So we're in the midst of back and forth on that. But the good news is the book is with the designer. The manuscript is done. It's been edited exhaustively, and it's just now all we're waiting on is the layout and design. We should have a printed book very, very soon. I can't impose a deadline. It's up to the publisher, but if things keep moving the way they are, hopefully I'll be happy with the final layout and design by the end of this week. Excuse me, like I said at the very beginning, the air conditioner went out this morning, and it's over 90 degrees outside, headed towards 100. So I have a whole bunch of fans on in the house going full blast to try and keep it cool enough for Skeet and myself, and it's warm. So I apologize. I'll be drinking a lot of water during this. Anyway, so yes, the book is going to be out very soon. Like I said, I can't give the designer a deadline unless I want to pay an extra $300 or $400, and that's a little bit silly. But we've had a couple of exchanges back and forth. I've seen a few PDF files of what she's doing. I like what she's doing with the layout and design. The book is going to be in color. There are going to be color photographs in it. I felt that was going to make things more impactful, and I think she's doing some very creative things with color and design in the layout itself and in the text. So I'm kind of giving her free hand with that. She is, after all, the professional designer. I'm just a writer. And like I said, I like what I'm seeing so far as far as the way she's using color and stuff. I don't really have any qualms with it. You know, it's little nitpicky things that make a difference to me as the author. So I'm doing everything I can. I'm working with her to do everything I can to give you a product that I'm very proud that you would have in your hand. It is what it is. It takes a little bit of time, but we will have the book in print very soon. If it's not in print by the end of this month, I will be shocked. Hey, Brent, how you doing? Lots been going on in the news about service dogs. We did the live version of the PTSDog radio show last Sunday evening. And we talked about this Rimmer character who took a 4-month-old puppy to the VA, was asked to remove the puppy for obvious reasons. First of all, nobody can convince me a 4-month-old puppy is a task-trained service dog. And digging deeper into the story, apparently the puppy evacuated its bowels and its bladder during his appointment at the VA. So naturally, they asked him to remove the dog, and he cried discrimination. No, you're not meeting the requirements, you and your dog are not meeting the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's really that simple. What are those requirements? Well, first of all, the dog must be trained to perform a task or tasks designed to assist you with your disability. 4-month-old puppy, yeah, no, it's not task trained. Second of all, the dog must be under the handler's control at all times. And if the dog is not under the control of the handler must be taking the appropriate steps to regain control. This guy went into the VA for some kind of procedure where he had to be put under. They actually woke him up out of anesthesia because his dog was evacuating its bowels in the room or somewhere, and needed to be taken out to walk. And it's not a nurse's responsibility to do that. It's not a doctor's responsibility. The handler of the dog is 100% fully responsible for taking care of their dog, not the hospital facility. And if the handler's unable, like if you're going to do a procedure where you're going to be under anesthesia or something, then you're responsible to bring in a secondary handler to take care of the dog while you're unable to. It is not the responsibility of the facility. So rightfully, they asked him to remove the dog. And then the other requirement of the ADA is that the animal be housebroken, which the 4-month-old puppy was not. All three of the requirements of the ADA were not met by this guy's dog. So to go and scream and holler discrimination is ridiculous. We have the right to use a service dog to assist with our disability, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to make sure that our dog fulfills the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Personal responsibility. It's not discrimination if your dog's acting up, pooping on the floor in the aisle of the Walmart, barking at people. They were well within their rights to ask him to remove his dog. This is not discrimination. A puppy is not a service dog. It is a puppy. At best, you can call it a service dog in training, but it takes years. It takes years. Skeeter didn't start working publicly until he was 2 years old, and I'd been working with him and training him that whole time. And training never ends. Still to this day, outings, every outing is a training opportunity. Every outing is a public access test. Every day is an opportunity for you or your dog to learn something. And that's just the reality of it. A 4-month-old puppy is not a service dog. Some days my 7-year-old working dog might not qualify as a service dog because he's just having a bad day. But part of being a responsible handler is understanding what's going on with your dog, and when it's the right choice to take a break, go shopping tomorrow because your dog's not focusing today. Go to the park and work on some basic stuff and help your dog refocus. Handling your service dog is an active verb. You are the handler. You have to handle. This is an action. This is a verb. It implies that you are not on autopilot, just letting the dog do whatever it wants, but that you are interacting with the animal, giving the animal commands, responding to the animal's alerts, to your conditions, and working with your service dog as a team. Teamwork is the key here. When you train your service dog, when you start working with your service dog, what you are doing is building a team. Then that teamwork gives you the ability to regain independence, rejoin the world around you, but it all comes with the building of that team. Brittany says, my service dog has bad days and constantly needs retraining because staying with my parents, he's being treated like a pet by them. Well, he's your service dog, not theirs. So if he's staying with your parents, absolutely, he's going to need to be refocused and constantly need updates and upgrades because he's not their service dog. The thing about a service dog is if you need a service dog, it's just like needing a walker or a cane or a hearing aid or any myriad of other pieces of medical equipment, that dog needs to be with you 24/7. If there's a reason that you can't have the dog with you 24/7, absolutely the responsible thing to do is find a safe place where your dog can stay while he cannot be with you. But you have to expect these people, they didn't train the dog. They don't work with the dog daily. They're gracious enough to care for the dog for you, but the dog's not actively working. So of course the dog is going to learn some ground or lose some ground. Absolutely. It's a living creature. It's not a robot. That's to be expected. But again, as a handler, understand that, work with the dog, work through issues, train every day. Every outing is a training opportunity every day. It never ends. This dog is a living, growing creature who needs change, whose responses to situations change. Everything, they're constantly evolving. And as the handler, are most likely going to be evolving at the same time. You're going to be growing, or maybe, depending on what your disability is, you may be deteriorating. You may need increasingly more from your service dog as time goes on, as the dog's life goes on. You can't just expect the dog to magically pick that up. If you need an additional assistance, say you've got a degenerative disc disease and your back is getting worse and worse, and you need to start training the dog to assist you with mobility once they're cleared by a veterinarian, you have to train that. You can't train it early because the dog has to be medically clear to be able to handle that kind of work. And you may have not have needed it 2 years ago. But as you know, our bodies change, and as we get older, shit breaks down. You may have to train the dog to begin to perform these kinds of tasks. So it's a continuing process. It never stops. And you have got to go into handling a service dog understanding that this is every day. This is day in, day out. You may not be in the mood to handle your dog on Tuesday morning, but guess what? Your dog still needs to be walked. Your dog still needs to be fed. Your dog still needs stimulation. This is a living being. So it's a change in lifestyle. It's an entire change in lifestyle when you decide that you're going to use a service dog as part of your treatment. And you've got to be prepared for that. You've got to be in the mindset to understand that everything's going to change. In a lot of ways, it's a good way, and I'll talk about that in a second. Well, I'll tell you, hot sunny day in the South with no air conditioning is no joke. Okay. Now this is just speaking for me. I'm going to talk about my experience with Skeeter and using the service dog for PTSD. One of the things I did not have before I had Skeeter was any kind of structure or framework or routine. The only reason I had to get out of bed in the morning was to take the medication that the VA put me on. That was my motivation. Get up, take pills. Well, then what? I don't know. It was perfectly reasonable for me at the time that I was on the zombie cocktail from the VA for treatment of PTSD. It was perfectly reasonable to just lay in the bed and stare at the ceiling for 6 hours. That was fine. I was that heavily medicated, so zombified that I just didn't care. It didn't matter. When Skeeter was born, we bred Skeeter. All of a sudden, I had a reason to get up in the morning. It was to go take care of my puppy. And, for the first 3-4 weeks, that was really nothing more than, making sure Mama got to go out and go potty, making sure Mama had food and stuff, because she was really taking care of the puppy, and, spending a little bit of time playing with the whole litter and things like that. But as he began to grow and start to become more independent, and I started to look at the litter of the puppies and know that one was mine, I started to get up for no other reason than to go spend time with my puppy. That saved my life. I had no other reason to live except to take my zombie medications before I had this puppy. And we'll get to that, Ken. Good point. We will get to that, buddy. It's good to see you, by the way. Anyway, so, then I started working with him and just training him to be a dog. And we would spend no less than an hour, maybe up to 2 hours a day, just working on the basics, sit, stay down, come, and playing. And that interactivity, that gave me something to do, gave me motivation. I had to teach him to walk on a leash, those kinds of things. And we worked on that for over a year, just him being a dog. I let him be a Malamute for a year. Then we started with the obedience training. Once he was mature enough to be able to focus, be able to control his own urges in order to listen to me and do what I wanted him to do. Then the full extent of Skeeter's formal training, we did the 6-week-long Canine Good Citizenship course at Petco when he was 6 months old. And it's not that I didn't know how to train a dog. I certainly have had dogs my whole life. It was that I just needed a little extra help. And I lucked out in that the trainer was a behaviorist. And he was great. He basically taught me what I already knew but didn't have words to wrap around. He taught me the concepts behind positive reinforcement training and gave me the tools I needed to continue to work Skeeter. In that 6-week period, Skeeter not only got his Canine Good Citizenship, but his Advanced Canine Good Citizenship certifications. I don't even know where that paperwork is. It means nothing according to the law. But that's Skeeter's formal training. All the trainer did, and he took me aside and said, "Look, you know what you're doing, and this dog is incredible. All I'm doing is giving you labels for things you've in maybe a different frame of mind or mindset around things you already know how to do." Honestly, the dog training really wasn't to teach Skeeter anything. Skeeter had it down. It was to teach me. And that's one of the keys to training. And it's one of the reasons why I really, really push cooperative training. If you're not able to train a dog on your own, find a trainer who will work with you. Find a 501c3 that will work with you to train the dog with you. You're responsible. You take the dog home every day. You go to classes to train. The trainer works with you and your dog to teach you how to train your dog. The best dog trainers in all these 501c3s that help veterans, the best dog trainers are the ones who work with you and your dog and work themselves out of a job. They teach you what to do for the next time so that you never come back to see them. Those are the best trainers. They're the ones who give you all the tools you need to continue throughout the dog's life. And when it's time to find a successor for that dog, I don't want to say replacement. You can never replace a service dog. When it's time to find a successor for that dog, you've got the tools that you need to continue and to train the new dog. Let's see. Troy Fenby says, training my dog is my only reason to leave my house sometimes. Absolutely. I still have days where the only reason I go out is because Skeeter needs to get out and exercise. And by exercise, I don't mean running or anything. I mean, go to the Walmart. And we make trips where we just go to Walmart just to walk through the store so that he remembers what he's supposed to do and where he's supposed to go. Ken makes a really good point. Ken says, I had to give up my dog that I was going to turn into a service dog because I couldn't even take care of myself. Ken, that is a very, very difficult and painful decision to come to. But for the sake of the dog, I think absolutely the right decision to come to, and for the sake of yourself. Does that mean you're not going to be able to train and use a service dog in the future? Absolutely not. It does mean you need to be able to get to the point where you are well enough yourself to be able to be a contributing member of the dog handler team. Now, I remember when you got the dog, and I remember how excited you were, and I'm sorry that happened. But again, in the long run, if you're in a position where you're just unable to handle yourself, you're certainly not in a position to handle a dog. Does that mean that, say, a paraplegic or a quadriplegic or an amputee is unable to handle a service dog? Absolutely not. But what it does mean is you've got to be as functional as possible in and of yourself to be able to handle the dog, to be able to give the commands at the appropriate time, and the like. And it's a hard decision to make, to make the decision that you want to use a service dog, even a PTSD service dog, which may not need as intricate a training as a mobility service dog who picks up everything for you or opens doors or things like that. It's a change in your lifestyle. It's a change in everything you do. Now, I will tell you, and then I'm not alone in this, but I can only speak for myself. I don't take 11 different medications and more than 30 pills a day. The zombie cocktail is gone. I no longer use it. I take 2 medications and 5 pills a day. And those just help keep the chemical changes in my brain at a level where they're not overwhelming me, and I'm able to function with my dog, replacing all those other medications, half of which were to counteract the side effects of the other half, which is screwy. And that's the excuse me. That's the medical approach to PTSD. Here, take these drugs. Oh, you have anxiety, take this drug. But this drug causes this, so take this drug to counteract it. But that drug has this counteraction, this reaction, so you might have to take this drug and let's increase this drug, and and all of a sudden you have 40 pill bottles and no life, because all you do is live to take the pills and they zombify you. Honestly, psychiatry and psychology really need to look at the service dog as a first option rather than a last option. And unfortunately, at least in the world of the Veterans Affairs, they go for the pills first. They throw drugs at you rather than look at any other options. I think that's backwards, but we have to change the entire culture of the VA before we can overcome that. It's a fight that we're taking, the same way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Start with the little stuff and build up to the point where we get the establishment to understand that there are other options, and they should explore those rather than going straight to the zombifying drugs. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. Yes, Troy, I trained Skeeter myself. I trained all his tasks myself. Like I said, all the trainer did was give me terminology that's accepted in the dog training field to back up what I already was doing just by knowledge of raising dogs my entire life. I use positive reinforcement and treats. Treat training is part of positive reinforcement training. I do not use negative reinforcement, and here's why, Brittany. Why do you want your dog to work for you? Do you want your service dog to perform the tasks for you and to have your back because it desires to do so? Or do you want your dog to perform tasks because it's afraid of what will happen if it doesn't? I think it is always better to have a dog who works out of a desire to please you than to have a dog who does it begrudgingly because if it doesn't, it gets a shock or it gets a collar yank or whatever. I understand that there's time and place for the tools that trainers use. Now, I'm just talking specifically about PTSD service dogs here. I feel very strongly that the bond that you form with your dog by being with your dog day in and day out, that bond is the basis of everything that you do with your service dog. The dog sees you at your very worst, understands where your head's going when you lose it and get suicidal or get rage or whatever your symptoms are. Brittany, I'll get right back to that in just a second. It's absolutely vital that is a positive experience. Now, there's a little confusion about this positive reinforcement training. Read Karen Pryor's book, Don't Shoot the Dog. It's excellent. It's an excellent resource. Karen Pryor, Pryor. It's out there on Amazon. You can find it all over the place. You do correct your dog, but you do not punish the dog. There's a difference between correction and punishment. A yank on a choke collar is a punishment. Do this is a correction. Okay, it's also called redirection. The dog wants to pull over there. A perfect example: how I trained Skeeter a A dog bred, he's an Alaskan Malamute, they are bred to pull. Skeeter does not pull on the leash. Well, how did I teach a dog whose entire purpose in how they were bred was to pull heavy weight, not to pull? It was real simple. The trick to training an Alaskan Malamute is that you have to get them to think it's their idea. That's something that the trainer that I worked with, who was a behaviorist, told me. Skeeter wants to go someplace. He wants to see new things. So when he would start to pull, no, let me back up a little. In order to train Skeeter to walk on the leash, the first thing that I did was train him to sit, and then he has the command, let's go. And then we start off. Now, what the trainer told me is as soon as he starts to pull, turn around, go back to where you started, exactly where you started, pick a line in the parking lot, go back to where you started, and start over. Make him sit, and then give him the let's go command. Now, this is not an exaggeration. I literally taught Skeeter not to pull on the leash in 10 minutes. I got him to sit, gave him the command, let's go. He started pulling. We turned around, went back. Sit. Okay, let's go. He started pulling. We turned around and went back. Sit. Okay, let's go. That third time, he looked at where he wanted to go, looked at me, looked at where he wanted to go, and something went click. And he didn't pull, and we went where he wanted to go. I was just teaching him not to pull at that point. It wasn't about, no, I don't want you to go over there. It was, don't pull on the leash. So once that little click happened in his head, he figured out, oh, if I don't pull, we can go. He stopped pulling. About once every 8 or 10 months, we have to do a refresher. But he doesn't, in fact, I've had to try to retrain him because I have a bad back, a very bad back. And sometimes I need his help to pull, like, say, going upstairs or when I'm pushing a heavy grocery cart. And I've had to retrain him to pull when I tell him to, because he knows better than to pull on the leash when we're walking. So, you know, again, and that's that evolution of things. Training is continuous. I still use treats randomly. And that's one of the principles that the positive reinforcement training teaches you is, yes, absolutely use treats. They use a clicker. You don't have to use a clicker. You can make a click noise yourself. And that marks when the dog is performing what you ask the dog to perform. That's a marker, and then you give the dog a reward, and that's all language in the prior book. Okay, so they use a clicker. They call it clicker training. It's also positive reinforcement training. It's all the same thing. So what it is say you tell the dog to sit. The second the dog's butt hits the ground, you click the clicker, or you say good, or you go. You indicate to the dog with a marker that is correct, and then you give the dog a reward. Skeeter's very treat motivated, so even still to this day, and that's one of the principles of the positive reinforcement training is once the dog realizes it will be treated when it performs the command you give it, you can then start still using the marker, still going or good or whatever you say or whatever you do to mark the behavior, but you lessen the amount of times you use the treats. So still to this day, I have a treat bag. It's not where I can grab it, but I have Skeeter's first treat bag. And still to this day, randomly, I'll just say, oh, it's Thursday the 9th. Let's do treats today. And he gets treated while he works. Do I treat him continuously every time he does something? No. But every time it's something that's a little challenging, you know, there's another dog in the store, but I want him to focus on me. So I tell him, leave it, watch me. He watches me, good boy, and I give him a treat. To just reinforce. You know, remember, the ADA says that the dog must be under the handler's control at all times. It doesn't say how. There's nothing wrong with a 7.5-year-old dog still getting treats on occasion. Now, if every time I took him out, I was still treating him, that might be a little silly. But what if I need to teach him a new task? Well, he's been trained to learn a new task by getting a treat when it's rewarded. That's what works with Skeeter. You're right, Troy. And yeah, you're very right, Troy. Every dog is an individual, just like every person is an individual. And every dog needs something a little different. One of the tricks and if you're having a consistent problem, Tracy, like your dog still pulls, maybe it is a good time to consult a trainer And most honestly, go to Petco, talk to the dog trainer, if they're not in the middle of a session, say, hey, I'm just having this continuous problem. No matter what I do, he pulls. And they may have other ideas of how to help you. Use groups here on Facebook. The PTSDog group is full of people who self-train, professional trainers. There's at least 3 or 4, maybe 10 or 12 professional trainers in the PTSDog group. Ask other people, hey, this is what's going on. I've been trying this. And I'm just not getting through to the dog that this is not what we want to do. One of the tricks that I've seen some positive reinforcement trainers do to draw the dog into a closer heel and not to pull is random direction changes with a reward immediately when the dog catches on and gets to your side. And that, I've seen that just random. You're walking with the dog on the leash, the dog is in a heel, you cut left out of nowhere. As soon as the dog catches up to where it's supposed to be, reward. And then randomly to the right, randomly stop, randomly go, change speeds. Change it up a lot so that the dog has to pay attention to you, and the dog will get to the point where it's at your side and staying there and focused on you because it doesn't know what you're going to do. Now, Skeeter and I work a little bit differently. Again, Skeeter's a sled dog, and I grew up mushing dogs in Alaska. So I use sled commands for him. When we're in a grocery store and I'm pushing a cart, Skeeter needs to know if he's at my right side, if I'm going to turn right, I have to warn him first or the car will run into him. So I use traditional sled dog commands. Ha for left, G for right, and whoa, meaning we're stopping. And so Skeeter and I, when we're going through the store, we have a continuous conversation because I'm letting him know where I'm going to go so I don't hit him with the cart. The cart can do some bad damage to a dog paw if you run over it. So if I tell him where I'm going, then he can go there too without getting run over by the cart, and that works out perfectly. Skeeter, because I've trained him to help pull the cart, Skeeter actually walks about 8 or 10 inches in front of what people would consider a perfect heel so that he can put tension on the leash to help pull the cart. That's what that is a task I have trained him to perform to assist me in pulling the cart so that I'm not pushing too hard and screwing up my back. Again, every handler uses their dog differently. When I'm not pulling a cart, Skeeter's right at that perfect heel with his head right at my hip. When he's helping me pull the cart, he's a little bit ahead. So I have to tell him where we're going. That's part of again, a service dog must be individually trained to perform tasks to assist its disabled handler. Direct quote from the ADA. Each dog is an individual. Each disabled people is an individual. That's a key. Cookie cutter dogs that come out of a program trained by a third party, how do they have specific individual tasks? How does that dog who was trained at a kennel for 2 years by some stranger know when you're having a nightmare? Do they fake laying in a bed and thrashing around and teach the dog to respond to that? Well, what if you don't thrash during nightmares? How does the dog know? If the dog's not with you, doesn't grow up right next to you, isn't able to see and hear and experience what happens when PTSD is overrunning your brain, how does the dog know? That's the difference between a reactive dog and a proactive dog. A reactive dog comes and does what it's told when it's told. A proactive dog says, oh, Dad's getting stressed out. I better get over there and warn him and alert to what's going on with him. Okay. You can train any trainer can train the dog to perform an alert by putting its paw on your knee. But the handler is the one who teaches the dog when to give that alert. Do you want that alert when it's too late and you're in a full-blown panic attack, or do you want that alert when the dog understands, hey, something's going on, your heart rate's starting to rise, I can smell adrenaline starting to pump. Let me warn you that this is going to happen. And then the dog redirects your attention to it rather than whatever it is that's going on around you that's pushing you to that point where you end up triggered. It's the difference. I draw this line. I draw it in the book. The difference between stressors the things that stress you and triggered when all hell breaks loose. And those of you who understand PTSD understand there's a level where you're handling it, and then it hits that threshold. Fight or flight kicks in, rage kicks in, panic kicks in, overwhelming anxiety kicks in, whatever your symptoms are. You know there's a level you can handle before, boom, you're gone. The dog, if you're working with the dog day in and day out, you have control of your dog 24/7. You're working together with a trainer to train that dog. The dog sees the signals and begins to alert you before you get to the point of no return. Excuse me. Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm trying to catch up on the comments here. Wow, Brittany. See again what I was talking about, Brittany. The program that you went through was negative only. I feel really bad for the dog. That's a tough one. Yeah, absolutely do treat training, Brittany. Absolutely do treat training. Make it positive. Give the dog every time the dog accomplishes what you need, it's a win. So you celebrate that win. Good job, good dog. Give him a treat. When the dog doesn't do what you need it to do, you redirect the dog. You correct the dog. You don't punish the dog. You correct the dog by giving it the command again, telling it that's what you need. And as soon as it does it, reward it. Good job, good dog. Yeah, Mike Novak, the pole, if you need it for mobility. I know a couple of people with bad backs, different injuries than mine, who need a counterbalance and pull with their dog. And so they, contrary to what's correct according to certain organizations, teach their dog to pull because that's the physical need that they have. Again, individualized training. The dog is individually trained to perform tasks to assist its disabled handler. Not cookie cutter trained. These are the only things the dog can perform that are acceptable as tasks. Says who? Let's see. That's great, Tracy. Yeah, training classes every week. That's fantastic. The key is that when you're not in class, you're still training. You know, take 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be 3-hour long grinding training session. Decide, hey, I want to work on downstay. Take 20 minutes and work with your dog on downstay in the house. And then go about your day. You know, it doesn't have to be this constant grinding thing, but it's always got to be in the back of your mind. Every outing, every opportunity, everything you do is a training opportunity. I retuned Skeeter's loading up into the truck 2 weeks ago, simply because he got to the point where he was like, oh, truck, and he'd bowl me over to get in the truck. So I had to take him back a step and reteach him and see Skeeter, when I say truck, he's ready to go. Truck. And he's like, yeah, truck, let's go. And he gets excited. He wants to go. He loves it. It's not my truck. It belongs to the dog. But I had to reteach him that he needed to sit and wait before I said, okay, load up. And it again, Skeeter's really smart. It took all of 10 minutes. We did it 2 or 3 times, and he's back to where he stops and waits until I say, okay, load up. So, if I have my arms full and I have to unlock it, and I have Skeeter trained where once we get to the truck, he's off leash. I take his leash off because I don't leave it on him in the truck. In case we did get in an accident, that leash could get caught and could harm him pretty badly. So before he even gets in the truck, I take the leash off. He doesn't go anywhere. He sits right there.